The air in the village of Gerensheim did not just feel cold. It felt wrong. It was the cold that settles deep into the bone, the kind that reminds you of fresh dirt and forgotten prayers. In the small, frozen square on the 2nd day of May 1597, the people gathered not for a feast, but for a spectacle of terror. Every eye was fixed on a single heavy object, a hook forged of iron, blessed by a priest, and prepared for a final terrible duty. For one woman, the long nightmare of pain was about to find its ending, but not in peace. It would end with the tearing of flesh and the gasping of a last, lost breath. Her name was Anna, and she had already lost everything but her silence. This is the true story of the most shocking execution in the history of the Holy Roman Empire, and the woman who became its silent, bleeding memory. Make sure to watch the video all the way till the end. I promise you're going to find it super informative. We put a lot of hard work into bringing you this content, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and share it with your friends. Your support helps the channel grow and motivates us to keep creating even better videos for you. The village of Gerensheim was no different from 1,000 other villages scattered across Germany in the late 16th century. It had its crooked houses, its muddy paths, and its parish church with a bell that seemed to always toll a note of worry. But on May 2nd, 1597, Gerensheim became the center of a horror that would be spoken of in hushed, fearful tones for centuries. The day began long before dawn. A heavy mist hung low, smelling of damp earth and the chilling metallic scent of something terrible to come. In the center of the town square, workers moved with grim efficiency. They were setting up the scaffold, not the simple wooden platform used for hangings, but a reinforced structure designed for a unique and brutal purpose. The star of this macabre theater was a piece of iron. It was massive, shaped into a cruel, thick hook, ending in a point that had been sharpened to pierce, not tear. This was no ordinary tool. It had been specially crafted by the town's finest blacksmith under the direct order of the regional court. A priest had even been brought to sprinkle it with holy water, a bizarre ritual meant to cleanse the instrument that was about to commit an unholy act. This detail, the blessed hook, only deepened the terror felt by the onlookers. It suggested that the act was not just justice, but a terrible, divine necessity. Meanwhile, locked away in a freezing cell beneath the court building, lay the reason for this dark assembly. A woman named Anna. We don't know her family name. History often forgets the names of the innocent, or the condemned, or both. We only know her as Anna, accused of a crime so terrifying to the people of that time that it warranted this unbelievable punishment: a pact with the devil. Anna had been arrested months earlier. The charge was vague, built on rumors, jealousy, and the fevered imaginations of people living in fear. She was accused of working dark magic, of causing bad harvests, or maybe just of being different. Now she waited. She was not allowed a single comfort, not a blanket, not a warm meal, only the constant, rattling cold. Her body was already a map of pain. The coming execution was the end of her suffering, but the journey to this moment had been a living hell. She was about to meet her death, but first, she had to survive the memory of the 11 terrible interrogations. The man tasked with breaking Anna was named Schultes. He was the official executioner, but in those days the job title meant much more than just swinging an axe. Schultes was the chief interrogator, the doctor of pain, and the keeper of the court's cruelest secrets. His reputation was built not on quick, clean endings, but on his ability to make silence confess. Anna's ordeal had stretched across weeks, a total of 11 grueling interrogation sessions. Each one began with a simple question: "Confess your pact with the evil one, Anna." And each time, Anna's answer was the same: a whispered, "I have nothing to confess." This denial was, in the eyes of the court, proof of her guilt. They believed that only the devil's power could give a simple woman the strength to resist the truth. So, Schultes began his work, applying methods perfected over centuries to shatter the human will. One of his tools was the strappado. This was deceptively simple but unimaginably painful. Anna's hands were tied behind her back, her wrists bound tightly with thick rope. The rope was then thrown over a high pulley attached to the ceiling beam. With a sharp pull, her entire body was lifted into the air. The unnatural twisting of her arms behind her back was agonizing. But the worst came when the rope was released a few feet and then stopped sharply. The sudden drop and catch dislocated her shoulders, ripping the joints from their sockets. The shock of the pain was meant to force a scream of confession. But through gritted teeth, Anna only repeated her denial. If the pain of the strappado failed, Schultes moved to the calculated cruelty of water torture. Anna would be strapped down to a table, a rag or piece of cloth forced into her mouth and down her throat. Then, large amounts of water, often filthy or icy, would be poured over the cloth, making her feel as if she were drowning. Her stomach would swell, her body would convulse, and her mind screamed for the air she couldn't breathe. It was a suffocating, internal agony designed to break the last remaining flicker of hope. The psychological torment was perhaps even more lasting than the physical wounds. Schultes would sometimes stop the torture and simply sit and stare at Anna for hours. He would tell her that her children would be shamed, that her soul was already forfeit, and that only a confession could save her from an eternity of hellfire. He painted vivid pictures of the hell that awaited her. He showed her the instruments of her suffering, cleaning them carefully in front of her. Yet, even when her body was a mess of bruises and dislocated limbs, Anna found a core of stubborn, frightened refusal. 11 times she was tortured. 11 times she maintained her silence. After the 11th session, even the hardened executioner, Schultes, knew that Anna would never confess. Her spirit, though damaged, was simply too strong, or perhaps, the truth she held was simply too simple. She was innocent. However, in the eyes of the court, a lack of confession did not mean a lack of guilt. It simply meant the devil had given her special strength. The magistrates, tired of the long, costly trial and the increasing whispers of the unhappy villagers, needed a quick, terrifying ending. They met one last time, their faces cold and set. They declared Anna guilty of the highest treason against God and man, and passed a sentence designed to shock the world into obedience. The sentence was read aloud. Anna, having consorted with the Prince of Darkness and committed acts of witchcraft, shall be taken to the place of execution, where she shall be hooked alive by the iron device, and remain there until the Almighty sees fit to claim her wicked soul. This execution method was one of the most horrifying ever conceived in medieval Europe. It was reserved for the worst crimes, often those against the highest authority, or, as in Anna's case, when authorities wanted to send an extremely powerful message. Being hooked alive meant that the large, thick iron hook, which had been forged and blessed, would be driven through Anna's body. It was designed to pierce a non-vital area, ensuring a slow, agonizing death that could last for hours or even days. The victim would then be hoisted high into the air, left to hang as a grim public spectacle. The preparations for this final act were swift and gruesome. The town center became a hive of dark activity. The execution platform was checked one last time. Guards were positioned on every street corner. The iron hook itself was polished and mounted onto a thick, vertical beam that would be raised onto the scaffold. News of the sentence spread like wildfire. People from neighboring towns began making the long journey to Gerensheim. They came for different reasons. Some to witness justice, some to feel the thrill of terror, and many more to see the face of a woman who had endured so much pain. The court wanted a powerful message against witchcraft. They were about to get a crowd that was hungry for the spectacle, even as they were sickened by it. Anna, hearing the clatter of boots and the distant, muffled sounds of the gathering crowd from her dungeon, knew her time was measured in minutes. Her body was broken, but her mind was finally clear. The struggle was over. She was about to become a symbol of terror and a martyr to silence. The morning of May 2nd arrived, bringing a weak, pale sun that did little to warm the frigid air. A drum began to beat, a slow, heavy rhythm that echoed the tolling of the church bell. It was the sound of the final journey. Anna was dragged from her cell. Her dress was ripped and stained, and she could barely walk. Her feet, bare and cut, stumbled on the stone steps. 2 guards held her firmly, their faces hidden behind masks of professional grimness. A priest walked ahead, holding a wooden crucifix high, reciting prayers of damnation and salvation in Latin, words that Anna no longer understood or cared about. As they emerged from the court building and into the street, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. It was an enormous crowd, swollen by people who had traveled for days. They lined the path, packed onto rooftops, and even climbed into the branches of leafless trees just to catch a glimpse. The mood was a confusing mix of fear, horror, and a strange, guilty excitement. They had been told Anna was a monster, but the woman they saw was simply broken. Anna lifted her eyes. For the first time in months, she saw the sky vast and gray. She ignored the thousands of faces, the pointing fingers, and the mumbled curses. In that moment, something shifted within her. She was no longer afraid of the pain. She had already felt the worst that human hands could inflict. The physical torment had purified her mind, leaving her with a strange, powerful sense of inner defiance. She knew she was innocent, and that was the only truth that mattered now. She spotted the scaffold in the distance, tall and black against the sky. She saw the vertical beam and the terrible, gleaming hook mounted upon it. It was far more brutal than she had imagined. But instead of fear, a flicker of something close to pity for her tormentors crossed her mind. They were the ones who had to do this. They were the ones whose souls would be stained by the lie. The procession moved slowly. Every step was an effort, but Anna kept her head held as high as she could manage. The sound of the drums, the smell of the damp wood, and the cold air were all that was real. She was no longer Anna, the woman accused of a pact. She was simply the body about to receive the final, terrible injustice. As she reached the base of the scaffold, the drumming stopped. The silence that descended on Gerensheim was so complete it felt like a heavy blanket. She was finally face to face with Schultes, the executioner, who waited with a look that seemed almost apologetic. The scaffold smelled of fresh sawdust and fear. Anna was gently, yet firmly, guided up the steps by the guards. Schultes, the executioner, stepped forward. His face was grim, showing none of the professional detachment he usually wore. Even for him, this task was extreme. Anna stood silent at the center of the platform. She was offered a last chance to speak, to confess, to beg for a slightly quicker death. Her voice, though barely a whisper, carried in the sudden, vast silence of the square. "I am innocent," she said. "May God judge those who condemn the truthful." That was her final word. No screams, no pleas, just a simple declaration of innocence delivered to the thousands gathered below. The magistrates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Schultes approached the iron hook. It was mounted on the vertical beam, ready. The process was sickeningly precise. Anna was positioned with her back against the beam. The iron was designed to penetrate the side of her body, just beneath the rib cage, entering a place that would guarantee maximum agony while avoiding the immediate blow to the heart or lungs. This was designed to ensure a slow, public dying. The executioner's assistant held Anna's shoulders firmly. Schultes raised a heavy, wooden mallet. He did not hesitate. With a single, terrible, rhythmic force, he drove the thick, sharp point of the iron hook into Anna's side. A sound ripped through the air. It was not a loud shriek, but a sharp, gut-wrenching gasp of pure, animal pain, quickly followed by the wet, sickening sound of the iron piercing bone and tissue. Blood, thick and dark, immediately bloomed on the front of her thin dress. The crowd below, which had been holding its breath, let out a collective, visceral groan of horror. People covered their mouths. Many turned away, unable to watch the reality of the spectacle they had come to see. The sheer brutality of the act, the use of the massive iron to slowly impale a living woman, was too much. As the hook secured its terrible hold, Schultes and his men worked quickly. They tilted the beam using a complex system of ropes and pulleys and began hoisting Anna's body upwards. She was suspended high above the square, dangling from the iron that was lodged within her. She hung there, still alive, moving only slightly as the pain took hold. Her eyes were closed, her head bowed in the cold, bright light of the day. The act was done, but the execution had just begun. The woman they had declared a monster was now a silent, bleeding monument to their own medieval cruelty. The magistrates had their message, but the price was a piece of the village's soul. Anna was now suspended high above the square, left to hang from the iron hook. The terrible beauty of the sunny day was completely overshadowed by the chilling sight of her hanging body. The execution was not a moment, but a process of slow, agonizing death. The crowd remained for a time, hypnotized by the horror. People spoke in hushed tones, pointing and whispering. The magistrates watched, satisfied that the message of fear was being delivered. They expected Anna to die quickly from shock and blood loss. However, Anna was a study in resilience. The severe torture she had endured in the preceding weeks had perhaps prepared her for this final ordeal. She did not scream, she did not thrash. She hung almost motionless, the terrible hook holding her upright. Hours passed. The sun tracked across the sky, and still, Anna lived. The initial shock of the crowd slowly began to curdle into something else. Pity and shame. People who had come to see a monster were now watching a woman, a silent victim, endure an impossible torment. They saw her stillness, her refusal to give in to desperate movement, as a kind of silent prayer, a final testament to the innocence she had maintained through 11 sessions of torture. As the afternoon wore on, the fear that the court intended to instill began to backfire. Whispers started to spread through the diminishing crowd. Not whispers of witchcraft, but of injustice. People began to question the judgment, the torture, and the unbelievable cruelty of the punishment. They wondered how a woman with the devil's help could maintain such quiet dignity. The magistrates, sensing the shift in the public mood, grew uneasy. They had intended to showcase power, but they were instead creating a martyr. Finally, as the long shadows of evening began to stretch across Gerensheim Square, Anna's last flicker of life gave out. She had been hanging, alive and suffering, for nearly 8 hours. The executioner, Schultes, was eventually ordered to climb the platform and confirm her passing. Only then was her body lowered. Anna's terrible execution became a landmark case. Historians later recorded it as a prime example of the extreme brutality that could be masked under the guise of medieval justice. The story of the woman who endured the strappado, water torture, and finally the iron hook, all while maintaining her resolute silence, was whispered for generations. She did not save her life, but her final, powerful refusal to confess helped to shine a blinding light on the darkness and terror of the courts that condemned her. Anna was forgotten by name, but her story, the true story of the woman hooked alive in Gerensheim, serves as a permanent, chilling reminder of the devastating cost of fear, rumor, and unchecked power.